Hey guys, it's Betty from BakerBettie.com and welcome back to another video. Today we are making classic cream puffs. Now if you have never made a cream puff before, it is a French pastry. It is actually made from choux pastry, which makes this really delicate, beautiful shell, and then we are filling it with real whipped cream. They are so delicious and incredibly easy to make, and they are going to impress anybody you make them for. Now to start our cream puffs, we are going to make our choux pastry batter, and this is quite a unique pastry component because it is made by cooking it on the stove, which is quite different from most other things we make in baking. So I have a saucepan here on my stove, and I'm going to start by combining a half a cup of water with a half a cup of milk, and these are both of the liquid components of our choux pastry. The water is going to help our shells crisp up a little bit, and the milk is going to add some richness into our shells. Now I'm also adding to the liquid about an 1/8 teaspoon of salt, just a large pinch of salt. And then I also have 1 stick of butter, which is 4 ounces. And this is unsalted butter that I have cut into cubes. And this is just going to help it melt a little faster in our mixture. So we're going to start with those ingredients, and I'm going to turn my heat on to about medium-high heat. And I just want all of this to come to a boil. Now, when the mixture comes to a boil, I want the butter to be completely melted at that point. So that's another reason why you do want to cut it into small pieces so that it melts quickly in this mixture. So we'll just wait for this to come to a boil. Now you can see here the mixture is coming to a boil, so I'm going to shut off the heat, and then I'm going to take my 1 cup of all-purpose flour and pour it in all at one time and start mixing it pretty vigorously. We're just going to keep stirring this until it all comes together into a smooth paste. And I just want to stir it until all of that flour is absorbed into the liquid, and then we're going to turn the heat back onto it and cook it a little farther. Okay, so now that all of that flour has been absorbed into our mixture, you want to flatten it down onto the pan so that you have one layer. And now we're just going to turn the heat back on it and let it dry out a little farther. So you want to listen at this point. The mixture is going to start sizzling. It will start sort of sounding like it's pan frying. And when you get to that point, you will check it to see if a film has formed on the bottom of the pan. And that is how you know that you have dried it out far enough. Okay, I'm really hearing the noise now. It's really talking to me. So I'm going to pull it back. And you can see now there is a thin film that is forming on the bottom of the pan, and that means our mixture is dried out enough. So I'm going to shut off the heat, and now I'm just going to start stirring the mixture until all of the steam evaporates off of the mixture. So this is going to be a bit of an arm workout, but you just want to stir it and keep stirring it until you no longer see any steam coming off the top. And that's going to help dry out your mixture and also cool it down a little bit before we move on to adding our eggs. So I'm just continuing to stir and stir this. I can still see steam coming off of it, which means it's not quite ready. And choux pastry is really a practice in patience. You really don't want to rush it, and I promise it will all be worth it in the end. So this will probably take about 3 to 4 minutes of stirring for all of that steam to come out of it. So my mixture is no longer releasing any steam, so we can move on to adding our eggs. Now this is a really crucial part of the process. You definitely don't want to rush this step, and this mixture cannot absorb too much liquid at once, which is why you need to add the eggs one at a time, and you need to stir those in before you add the next egg. Now this is a bit of an arm workout, and I want you to pay close attention to how the mixture looks before the egg is completely absorbed and after it is completely absorbed, because the look of the mixture definitely changes once you are ready to add your next egg. So I have 4 eggs here, and I'm going to add them one at a time. So we'll start with just the first egg. And I'm going to mix this in until it is all completely absorbed into the mixture. So if you look at the mixture right now, you can see that the egg is still kind of sitting on top of the mixture. It's not completely absorbed in, which means I need to keep stirring and really use a little arm strength for this. Now you can see here how the mixture has changed. There is no longer any glossiness to the mixture. That egg is all completely absorbed in, and it's one cohesive batter. So that's how you know you're ready to add your next egg. So we'll go ahead and add our second egg. And again, we'll mix all of that in until it is completely combined before we add the next one. Okay, we are ready for egg number 3. And now after egg number 3, the mixture is going to start looking a little bit more glossy, but you'll still be able to tell once that egg is completely absorbed in. Now we will mix in our 4th and final egg, and then our choux pastry will be ready for piping. Now if you were making a larger batch of this choux pastry, you could technically move this into your stand mixer or use a hand mixer to mix in the eggs. I have done that before if I was making a large batch, but it's really not necessary for a batch this size unless you just really don't want to do all of the stirring that it requires, but that's definitely an option if you prefer. Okay, and this is how your choux pastry will look once it is completely done. It's a little bit glossy, but all of those eggs are completely absorbed, and it's a really thick batter. It's going to be thick enough that you can pipe it, but it's not so thick that it's a dough that you can roll out. So now we can go ahead and move this into our pastry bag for piping. I have a pastry bag here fit with just a small open tip, and I like to use a jar or a wide mouth glass to put the pastry bag down in and fold the top over so that this stays clean while we are filling the bag. And now I'm just going to transfer the choux pastry into our piping bag. Now if you don't have a piping bag, you could use a Ziploc bag with just the tip cut off the top. And once the bag is filled, you just want to press that pastry down into the bag so that you don't have any air bubbles inside. And now we're just going to pipe our shells onto a parchment-lined baking sheet. Now, after you make your choux pastry, you do need to use it within about 3 hours, but you can wait a little bit of time if you like. I actually think that choux pastry works really well if you let it rest for about an hour in a cool part of your kitchen, but you can go ahead and use it immediately. The way we are going to pipe our shells is to make small circles on our parchment paper, and you want to start in the middle of where you are piping your shells and just apply even pressure and pull up. Now, these are going to expand quite a lot in the oven, so I don't like to pipe them very big because they are going to puff up so much. What will happen in the oven is all of that liquid is going to start evaporating out of the shells, and it's going to create steam in the oven, and that is going to make them puff into a really nice and crispy cream puff shell. So let's go ahead and keep piping our shells. So you do want to leave some space in between them because they are going to expand quite a lot in the oven. Now we will deal with these little tails that are formed as we're piping the shells after we get everything piped. I'll show you what to do with those. So now that I have all of my shells piped on my parchment paper, I'm going to dip my finger in just a little bit of water and just smooth out those little tails that were created as we were piping these. Now what's going to happen is I will put these in the oven for 10 minutes at 450 degrees Fahrenheit, and then I'm going to drop the oven temperature down to 350 degrees Fahrenheit and let them continue cooking. Now that really high heat is going to really rapidly evaporate all of the moisture out of the shells and create steam. Now that steam is going to expand the shell very quickly. They're all going to puff up really nicely. And then the last part of the baking process, when we lower the temperature down, is going to finish cooking the shells and crisp them up. So let's go ahead and bake our shells, and I can't wait for you to see how much these puff up. Our shells are out of the oven and they puffed up so nicely. They're really nice and hollow on the inside, and they're just a little bit crispy on the outside. And now you just want to let these cool completely before you fill them. Now you can fill these with anything you like. The most classic filling is whipped cream, or you could use pastry cream, or you could even use ganache, just really anything you like. Now I am going to use a classic, just vanilla flavored whipped cream today. And if you aren't going to be serving these immediately, you want to leave the shells unfilled until right before you serve them. Now these also freeze really well, and I would suggest freezing just the shells by themselves without filling in them, and then you can let them thaw and fill them the day you are going to serve them. So now I'm just going to take a small little paring knife and cut a small hole in the bottom of my cream puff. And now I'm just using my pastry bag to pipe the cream right into the center of the cream puff. And that is it. That's our cream puffs. So now I have to have a taste. Oh my gosh. They are so good. They're tender, they're just a tiny bit crispy, and they have all of that beautiful real whipped cream in the middle. These are going to be a hit at any of your parties. People will be so impressed with you, and they are so easy to make. Now I really hope you enjoyed this cream puff tutorial, and if you did, make sure you give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions, please leave those in the comment section. I will be happy to answer them. And if you aren't already subscribed, make sure you hit that subscription button and ring the notification bell so you never miss a video. You can follow me at Baker Bettie on Instagram and on Facebook. And I will be back next week with another baking tutorial. I'll see you guys then.